I don't need to introduce you because if there's anybody on a RainCamp call who has no idea who Bob Stewart is, well, that's really weird. So I'm not going to do any introduction for you.
I'll introduce me a little bit. My name is Bob Stewart. I'm the community evangelist here at ActiveRain. I got to pull all these people together, and we're super excited about having some great, you guys have been listening to some really good stuff. As we kind of set up and said, what are we talking about here? And we're going to give you a bunch of good ideas, and you're going to think to yourself, man, I don't have time to do all of this stuff. And so I wanted to just share with you guys a couple of things that we've seen agents doing over the years, whether that be when we had a real estate brokerage, or I see these things. My wife's on the road right now, so I know she's not listening, so I can share this piece of information. I see these things in my wife's business and in their team's business, and how can we get a little bit more efficient and stop wasting some time? What are some things that we're doing every day that is wasting time for us that we might be better position to put off on somebody else? And you've heard from a couple of the different speakers, and Laura mentioned it, delegation. And so what are some of these things that we're doing? I think there's two fundamental questions that you really have to understand about your business. And the first one is, how much money do you make per hour? And when we used to go out and do the rain camps in person, I would always bring this up because there would be a lot of people sitting in the crowd thinking, I don't have the time to blog, but I'm not sure that they necessarily know how much they're making per hour. And so, there's some basic formulas that we can kind of put into play and figure that out. The second question is, where are you actually making your money? And when you're in the real estate business, again, there's just so many things that you could be doing at any given time. But if you don't understand where it is or what activities that are actually producing income for you, then you maybe get caught up in some of the stuff that isn't as important, and you aren't able to build a business like, any bigger than just kind of what you can handle on your own. You'll never have a business like Ben or like Ryan, and most of us probably won't have that business anyways because those guys are ridiculously just forward-thinking and high Ds. But if we understand where our money is actually made, we can have a little bit more successful business for ourselves. So if you don't know how much money you're making an hour, I would really encourage you to figure it out. And some of you guys are thinking, looking at this thing and going, 40 hours a week? Yeah, right. I'm working 60 hours a week, right? So you need to understand how much do you make per hour. And the reason that you want to understand that is because there may be things that you're doing in your business that are not income-producing activities where you're wasting an hour every day that could have been more well spent getting that off to somebody else. And Laura in her presentation mentioned using a college student. I think Sue mentioned using a college student. So there's some avenues out there where we can maybe get labor, smart labor, that's not necessarily going to cost us an arm and a leg for our business. So, I would suggest that your money is probably made in 3 areas, right? Prospecting, and Ryan wanted to find a way to kind of do the mass media prospecting for seller leads. Appointments, right? You're never going to make $1 in real estate unless you've got an appointment with a client. And then closings, obviously. So it really wants you to think about what are some of the other things I'm doing in my business that are taking away from my time or my ability to focus on these particular things. So look here. Stop handling your own paperwork. And this is one that drives me nuts. And it's so funny to me. And you would sit back and look at an agent. We had these agents in our office, and we would offer transaction management services, and we would do those for a fee to our agents. Some of your offices might offer those things to you guys, for free. I don't know. Most of them are done kind of on a fee basis, and the agent sits back and they go, you know what? I don't want to hand over $500 out of my commission or $350 out of my commission. I would rather just handle the paperwork and all of the stuff that happens after you get that deal signed around before it goes to closing. I'd rather handle all that stuff myself. But if you knew that your time was worth, let's say, $50 an hour, and then you step back afterwards and realize, oh my goodness, I just spent 20 hours taking this transaction from the point that it got closed to the point that it that got signed to the point that it got closed, you realize just there you lost money, right? You lost money because it doesn't make sense to essentially pay yourself. The other side of that is, what could you have been doing with those 10 to 20 hours that you spent? And I'm in a group on Facebook, I asked them yesterday, how long are you guys spending on your transactions after? And the answers went from 8 hours to like 30 or 40, and those were people who were talking about short sales. But the reality is that you're not only like losing that money, that you make per hour, you're also losing that ability to generate additional income for yourself. Those hours are so valuable for you. So just stop handling your own paperwork. Get a transaction manager. You know, if you have those things available in your office, find one. There's these virtual transaction management places out there now. It's really important, and it's going to be important for you to kind of take that next step and just kind of get rid of some of that stuff in your business that, you know, doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense for you to be handling yourself. Adobe EchoSign is one of our sponsors here. I'm going to throw this slide in there for you guys. Use electronic signatures. I mean, come on, this you know, if you are still handling your own paperwork, for goodness sake, at least do it in a fashion that's efficient, that makes it easier for the people on the other side of the you know, what used to be a fax line, right? To, you know, to get these things signed, get these documents back and forth. Electronic signatures, if you're not using them, I don't understand. And I think most of our, you know, we've got a pretty savvy crowd here on RainCamp, so most of you guys are probably using these. If you're not, Chris is going to throw up a link right now. They're doing a little deal where you can get like 10 free electronic signatures to use for your next 10 transactions, okay? So, you know, if you're not using it, take advantage of that. They don't ask you for a credit card or any of that fun stuff. You can just get in there and try it out, you know, see if this is something that could save you a little bit of time in your business. This one, you know, there's going to be some people out there that definitely disagree with this, but why do you attend an inspection? I've never understood that concept. My wife, she went to her very first inspection, you know, 7 years ago when she got into real estate, and she turned around and said, never going to one of those again. Like, there's no reason for me to be there. She has an inspector that she works with. You know, she's got a couple different inspectors. She'll refer those to her clients. She knows those guys are going to go in there and do a good job. The reality is, you being at an inspection is almost a conflict of interest. There's, you know, why do you need to spend an hour or 2 hours, or, you know, if you have a real thorough inspector, why do you need to be there for that particular thing? You've wasted an hour of time, right? That's an hour you could have spent prospecting, or you could have spent doing something a little more efficient for your business, maybe handling some more of your paperwork if you're still doing that. Okay, this one's going to get me in trouble, but have you ever considered farming out your blogging? Oh my goodness.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Did Bob Stewart just say this?
Yeah, right. So when we would do these live RainCamps, Ben would say this on stage, and then I'd have to defend Ben, and people would be like, oh my God, Ben Kinney doesn't even do his own blogging. He gets somebody else to write content, and that's why his website ranks so well, and that's why he can create such massive volumes of content. How would he do that? He would go find, again, college kids, and actually what he did is he just went into Craigslist in Bellingham, Washington, and he posted a little ad on the writing section of Craigslist, and there are starving writers out there in every single one of your markets that would love nothing more than to get, you know, $8 an article for something that you've asked them to write about. He got more submissions. He got submissions from English professors at Western Washington University. He got submissions from like published authors, right? These are people that you can utilize and leverage to be able to write content. Now, not necessarily, I wouldn't say every single post you put out on your blog would be of this nature, because you want to have some personality in your blog. But, you know, if you wanted to do a review on a local business, or you wanted to put up a review of a neighborhood, or write about some of the local events that are happening in town, you know, there's no reason that you couldn't find a college kid for $8 an article, or you know, $6 an article, or something. Craigslist and the writing gigs gives you the ability, you tell them what you're willing to pay for them, and you're going to get some responses. And Ben went through and he kind of pared his down. He had a ton of responses, and he just got it down to about 3 or 4 authors that he would use. And when he had a series of articles that he wanted written, he would send the topics over to him. You know, he would have, at this point we didn't have this, but he would have taken our SEO class on ActiveRain, and he would have made sure to tell them, hey, here's the 4 things that I need to make sure that you get in this article, so that when you spin it back to me, it's just ready to get out there and post for me. So, gosh, if you know, again, this comes back to how much is my time worth? And if I can pay somebody $10 to write an article that might take them an hour, or it would take them a half hour, where it would have taken me an hour and it cost me $50 because I make $50 an hour, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense in every scenario to just continue to not leverage some of these places where we can save some time and you know, be a little bit more smart with with that time. So schedule social media. Social media is a time suck. How many of you guys jump on Facebook? You thought that you were going to go on there to prospect to your sphere, like Debbie's going to talk about in a few minutes here, and you're in there. You're sucked in. You're looking at people that you don't even care about. You're commenting on stuff, pictures everywhere. You know, I would highly encourage you to put some kind of schedule together, and maybe that's, you say, you know, for a half hour in the morning I'm going to do this, for a half hour in the evening I'm going to do this, or 15 minutes here and there, but don't allow yourself to just get into social media and not really have a plan to get out of there. It can be one of the largest time sucks. Now, these things can be effective if we can make sure that we're not letting it, you know, rip a half hour or an hour out of our day that we should have spent you know, calling expireds or setting up our expired campaign, or what are some of the other prospecting methods that you have in your business. And then this is another one. If you're not scheduling time on your calendar, you know, at least a couple of times a week to prospect, you need to do that, because what happens is you get so caught up in the paperwork and the different transactions that you have going on. And I mean, in our real estate company, we saw this. You know, these ridiculous peaks and valleys in people's business, and they would peak because they had 3 deals and they were all going on at the same time, and they were juggling things in the air, but they never scheduled prospecting time to go back and figure out what's going to happen when these 3 deals are done. And then they'd have these huge valleys as they kind of reset their business and said, okay, now I got to prospect again to find that next client. So make sure that you're scheduling prospecting time in for yourself. If you're not doing that, you know, try it. Try it for a week. Maybe I'm not one of those people that keeps to a schedule very well. You know, if you schedule this stuff in and you just get it done, you're going to see the results in your business, and it's going to make you want to continue to schedule it in down the road. Here would be my last little thing. I would say try to figure out one marketing system and get that thing on autopilot. And Laura, you know, you guys can go to lauraduggan.com/RainCamp. She's got that expanded webinar in there. Her marketing system for expireds is on autopilot, right? She said the college kid that comes in a couple of times a week, you know, she does have to do the picking out of the expired listings, but the marketing component of that is on autopilot. For some of you guys, that might be your website. You might have a market leader site, or your site just might be generating good buyer and seller leads, and you don't really have to spend a ton of time on it. So you may be doing pay-per-click. Get something on autopilot, okay? Because it's one of those things where you don't have to worry about it anymore, and you know when you turn around like Ryan in his radio spots that he's going to have 50 seller leads waiting there for him next month because he's been able to set up a marketing system and just let that thing go. I mentioned handled by a co-pilot because, you know, once your business starts to get to a certain point, Ryan was here, Ben was here, these guys, their very first hire was an admin, right? To take a lot of these things off their hands, the paperwork, the posting of the blog, the you know, in Laura's case, the expired letters that are going out. So get one system set up on autopilot. That's all I got for you guys.